Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor Beware podcast. I am John. My co-host is Andy. And unfortunately, having listened to me say that this is the Beware podcast, you are now obligated to finish listening to this podcast or you will lose something. Andy, give me something. What could they lose here?
Their ability to listen to superior Survivor podcasts. That's true. Once you hit play, all of the 40 RHAP podcasts that gets posted every week are inaccessible to you on that device until you get to the end of ours. Sorry, your choice. You should own.
I mean, you could listen at maybe 1.5 speed if you want to, but that's about as much as we're willing to give you.
Yeah, I can only imagine what I sound like at 1.5 speed at certain points of this. Because, I would never do that. I need to get the true experience. I'm an audiophile when it comes to listening to my own audio.
Mm-hmm. And I am an expert editor, and so you enjoy my finely honed audio edits.
Hey, you know what else I enjoyed?
What's that?
This episode.
Oh, shit. Me too. I don't know if you know this, but Survivor's actually been pretty enjoyable so far this season.
Yeah, no, I dig it. I do think that there were some flaws, some things worth discussing, criticizing about this episode. But in general, I'm digging it so far. I like the people. I like the presentation. I like some of the new editing choices, the new storytelling techniques. So yeah, I'm having fun watching it.
Yeah, I like, and I think we've mentioned this before, I like when they play with the nonlinear storytelling. I don't know that I loved it as much when they did it here. It didn't quite hit as well as it sometimes does. Still fun, though. I mean, I always encourage the show to play around and do new stuff. They maybe are playing around a bit too much, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Overall, though, I think the biggest thing for me is that we've always said a cast makes or breaks a season. And I am still very much enjoying seeing this cast. No matter which tribe they tend to focus on for the week based on who's going home, whatever. I've always enjoyed checking in with each tribe. There's never one that I'm like, oh man, we got to see these people again. That's aiding the enjoyment for me.
Yeah, no, I think there's several different engaging personalities. There are people that I like that are doing way too much, and that's entertaining in itself.
Yes.
I think there's other people that are, playing it well. So yeah, no, so far I agree. There's nobody that is like, this. It could get there. It often does. But at this point, I feel like it would take a swap to like put, and I'm not sure. I don't know if you could put a whole tribe of, let's not watch thems all together at this point, just mathematically.
So kind of you to not call them duds, because kind of they are.
Well, I feel like that's really discriminatory to the dud community. I don't know if you know this, but my father was killed by a dud.
Oh,
I don't know.
Was that when he was out fur trapping?
Something like that. And also, hey, my dad's still alive. That was really insensitive for me to make jokes about people losing their fathers. Maybe legitimately so.
Maybe we cut that part.
It stays. Beware! Beware! We cannot. You say things and they live forever unless we edit them.
Yeah, right. So speaking of editing, there were some complaints this week about the editing of the show, and in part because so much of the edited version of the show focused on the advantages and the game mechanics and all that. What's your take on this? Is it bothering you? Is it too much?
So, a couple of questions there, and I have two different answers. Is it too much? Are there too many advantages and too much time spent on them? Maybe. Yeah, I'm going to give people a maybe on this. I know it's a common complaint. And I know, like, when it first happened, I was like, ugh, like when the first Beware, because the first Beware advantage shows up on the beach where the only Beware advantage had been found. So I'm like, what? Okay, so they're doing more of these? That was a bit my instinct. But, like, does it bother me? The answer is, like, no. These things don't tend to bother me, which has actually made me, like, a bit of had an existential dread this week or something in that. Wait. Why don't things like this ever bother me? Have I become so, annoyed by the reflexive automatic, complaints whenever something new is introduced to this game from a vast swath of the community that I now just will never criticize the show? Am I becoming the fan who will never criticize the decisions made by the people they've decided to cheer for, but that person is the show itself?
Ooh, it's almost like you're clinging to your tribal loyalty to the show.
Yeah, no, and so I worry about that. But then I thought about it a little bit more, and I said, no, I don't have to worry about it. I'm fine. I'm great. My opinions are good. Because I do criticize the show at sometimes, and I do think that there might be too much. Now, we still have to wait and see how that actually affects the season, because I think even in this episode, which I agree, had a lot of the time devoted to like the dispensation of these advantages and the description and all of that. I still think we got a fair amount of other stuff. You know, I think when people really start to think about like the things that happened in the episode, there were personal moments and there were other little funny bits mixed in with all of this. Just it's the same. I'm still enjoying this season, but I can understand some concern that this could lead to future problems down the line. Are we going to have tribals where like nobody has a vote? We're going to have tribals where everybody has two? Like, we don't know. So I think by and large, our tendency to wait and see is the right one. I was just like, yeah, but when do I criticize? How about you? Do you think it's too much?
I mean, I'm like you. I get the complaints. I actually think it might be a little too much to be having advantages in every episode. But again, we got a small sample size. You know, we don't know that this is like a streak that's going to continue. And I think overall, people are just getting a little too caught up on this one detail instead of looking at the product as a whole. Like, we're NBA fans, right? We both hate James Harden because he's flopping and foul seeking all the time. And it's just very annoying to watch his games, but we'll still watch the games he's in because ultimately we will generally enjoy the product overall, even though we're mostly rooting for him to lose. But still.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only going to watch him play against my teams. I'm not going to tune into a Nets game versus somebody else.
Right.
And maybe that's the thing. They're like, I could just watch Funny Accent Survivor, where, I don't know, maybe they don't have advantages, maybe they have tons. I actually don't know.
All I know is they have a lot of episodes that I'm not willing to commit to. And speaking of those episodes, though, I think it's understandable why they're doing this because, I mean, you and I record a podcast and we know like the most dangerous thing is dead air, right? And so similar to this show, like I think they put so many idols and advantages to make sure that like airtime is filled. You don't want to have episodes where you're struggling to find anything that can make the edit. So the worst thing that they could have happen in their view is have nothing of interest to show. And they feel like having these advantages and idols and all those things at least gives them something in addition to the challenge that is, of course, always going to take place. Yeah.
And that could be it. And I think, you know, the fair response to that would be trust your people, trust your show a bit more. And I think there's something to that. I'm not just criticizing people who believe that. I think there is a real argument because it did feel, especially like just in it, there's like, man, so much time is dedicated to this. Now, ultimately, some of it is time that they'd been dedicating in this way anyway, like the new Beware advantages that they just, you know, dropped in front of people, was just a new way of distributing who was going to that island, which, you know, the previous episode was, hey, the winners pick somebody from the losers. And, before that it was just like somebody volunteer. So in that respect, it's not anymore, but once they get to the island, of course, it's another chance to get more advantages. That said, I've been finding those segments actually pretty interesting, and the advantages themselves and the distribution of them. I'm not sure if the advantages themselves, and we discussed last week that we might think like the idle one is too, you know, punitive and that sort of thing. But the approaches people are taking towards them and how they are reacting, I do feel like has been revealing character, and I do think, you know, as I discussed earlier, how the show is finding like new ways of, you know, telling the stories. Like I thought it was kind of fun the way they revealed Brad finding the idol, because it was also highlighting each person on the tribe looking for it and JD narrating the whole thing. So like I do think that they've at least found ways of mixing it up. And in some ways, maybe this one would just been easier if like Brad's idol was found last week instead of this week. So I don't know. I don't know where I stand completely on this. The one thing I'll say is I do think a lot of people underestimate how necessary it is for this show to evolve and to add new wrinkles, because I don't know that it would last 20 years if it was still the same game.
Exactly.
Right?
If it was still the season 4 or 5 game, I don't know that we made it through the 20s.
Yeah. And if it was still like the 15 or 16, like the players seem to get into... They understand the book, right? If you keep it the same too much, then they just start playing the way that they've seen previous seasons play, and that would get boring. It's like a game, just general game development. There's kind of a meta within it, and it evolves. And once the show, you know, has a problem with like, okay, well now, this is just an example, I don't know. people are devaluing challenges too much. But that's a huge part of our show and a huge thing that our like a huge segment of our audience values. So what can we do in order to make people not do that? So, then like not just vote out challenge beasts as soon as they can. Well, maybe we introduce these advantages that potentially challenge beasts could find to keep around. That's like, again, this is hypothetical, but like trying to keep a game going and fresh, I do think requires adjustments like this. And sometimes you overcorrect in this, and thus you have to add. But I do think there's a bit of like, they just did too much, and I worry that the 1 year off is why. They had a year off of like all these ideas without being able to do anything, and they just did too many. Because on top of all of this, there's still that dice that's not a dice hanging out there.
Well, and even further than that, there was some debate about doing the fire token thing again, and it's like, are you fucking kidding me? I think in that case, so they probably wouldn't have had the dice. But at the same time, you made one very good point. Maybe more than one. I'll give you one though.
1.5 maybe.
Yeah, sure. And that was, in previous seasons, not even just in this season, in previous seasons, they're filling up this airtime with something else. It's been like, going to talk to Boston Rob and Sandra. It's spending time at Edge of Extinction. It's something else. It's not necessarily camp life. And so I think the people who complain about this stuff are expecting that you're going to get more camp life and seeing who these people are and strategizing. And, maybe there would be some of that stuff, but at the same time, like, it might not actually have been all that interesting. You can't guarantee that there's going to be enough good content there. So it would be nice if they had some sort of flexible thing where they didn't necessarily have advantages that they had to show linearly when they were acquired, just so that story-wise we could get, some camp life here, and then we'll have an episode with a lot of advantages all at once, whatever it might be. But then people would just complain like, oh, we didn't know that Brad had that advantage for 6 days or whatever it might have been. So they're hamstrung to a degree.
But in some degree, they've done it to themselves, right? Because
other
people would say, well, then don't do the stuff with Rob. Don't do the stuff with Ghost Island. But I do think, like, the big thing that is actually replacing, if we're looking more traditional, is reward challenges. So, like I think there was always, like a B block of something. And they've now, for this season, chosen to fill it with, the Prisoner's Dilemma challenge for the most part, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, I do think that there's a structural issue. Now, one complaint that people often have with the advantages is that they're too powerful, right? They're like, it's changing the game too much, and people, the success in this game is too determined by like who, won the treasure hunt.
Yep. Collects the most trinkets.
Yeah. And fair that's not why they watch the show. It's not why they fell in love with it. So far this season, that really hasn't been the case. And again, we don't know how that's going to be. Hopefully, at some point, one of these things actually is like a positive force in the lives of one of these players. But so far, I at the very least, I think the show has addressed that concern. These things are not too powerful. If anything, they are the mark of death.
Yeah, and I think actually it could swing the other way in that the one nice thing about an idol was that theoretically, if you're in a terrible position within your tribe, alliance, whatever it might be, you've got a way to keep yourself from being vulnerable. And, that's been useful to some of our favorite players at times. But now with the beware portion of the beware advantage, like, you could actually take someone who's in a bad position and then put them into a worse position by trying to save themselves. So it can be dicey, and I don't know, this might end up backfiring on them and they might see that. But I think in general, the show tends to course correct if things don't work out the way they intended them to.
And it's possible that this is a course correction, right? That they've seen the way that Survivor has gone recently, and that, barely anybody wins now without having some form of, idol or advantage. I believe like Tommy is probably the only example that we can think of recently, if people can think of Tommy at all.
Nope.
Weirdly, the community of people who complain about the trinkets and idols did not celebrate his win. I don't know how that happened. And theorized, I think, fairly credibly, that this could be one of the reasons why women barely ever win anymore, which is a legitimate problem that the show should be doing things about. And I think has been doing things about. The biggest part would be casting. But maybe this is it. It's like, well, if these things favor a certain type of players with a certain level of aggression, and if that is, and these are ifs, and also trying to parse the thoughts of the people who make this show, could that way madness could lead. But if that more typically is male, well, by putting all of these restrictions on these things, maybe that'll balance the stakes. Maybe that will, maybe that's a way of addressing this problem, if indeed that is.
Well, and not only that, but in this specific episode, they didn't so much hide the Beware advantage thing as just drop it in a relatively easily to find spot right in the middle of camp.
Yeah, I'm with a lot of people when they first show the scene and it's, beside Liana. I'm like, did it fall out of Xander's pocket? Like, I thought that's must have been what it is.
The same here.
Again, that beach already had theirs. I'm like, it's weird that he wrapped it up. And then it's like, oh my God, it's another one. When Sydney is talking to almost everybody in her tribe, she starts talking about how, like, I was asleep and this man woke me up, and literally I was expecting the rest of that sentence to be, it was a producer dropping this thing in front of me, because that scene came before she had found the advantage. But
yeah, that's the thing is, if previously you might have had to be an aggressive idol or advantage hunter to find such things, you certainly cannot make that complaint about this particular advantage.
Yeah, not since it was hidden under Ben's lap or something on the boat. Have we seen it like this? So I hear people, and I'm not here to do the thing I often do. It's like, stop your whining. I think there's a complaint there. I'm still not sure if it has reached a critical mass, but it feels like it. And honestly, like you asked, does it bother me? And I'm like, I don't think it does. And I wonder why it doesn't. The one way it does bother me is like when we first show that they're going to throw 3 more advantages in the game before we know that it's like, it's just an invitation to the same advantage that's been floating every other episode. Was like, this is how it bothered me. We're going to be hearing about this. Like, it's not even like I'm upset that the show is doing it. It's just like, why do you have to keep doing this to my comment section, Survivor? And sure enough, when I go in there, hours after, like, I could feel the disturbance in the force of people just hitting their keyboards, like, too many advantages. And now here I am, like, structuring my own podcast to, like, lead it off with, like, 15 minutes of discussion about how maybe it's a bad thing or not.
Well, and then now, because it is the same advantage happening over and over, the extra vote, are you going to remember the 6 people that have extra votes at this point? It does start to get a little much. They do at least do the Chiron thing, which is nice. And they started doing that, I think, a couple seasons ago after someone tweeted at Jeff Probst, that's the way to get heard. And
I think it was just on 40. I think they started in 40, but who knows?
It might have been. And it's relatively recent, but it is a good change, though.
I mean, am I going to remember? Yes, I'm going to remember. This is like what I discussed last week. It's like, are these things too confusing? I don't know. I'm the wrong person to ask. I overanalyze the show. So these things aren't confusing to me. They actually engage that part of my brain, but are they too confusing for other people? I mean, certainly several people have complained that they're confusing, so it must be. Like I said last week, the one caution I have is like, maybe people aren't turned away by confusing things as much as we think they are.
That's true.
You know what is kind of confusing? What the hell is Brad up to? What's going on with that dude? Not the like guy who used to do stuff for our site and then ghosted. The character on the show.
I would say that there was nothing wrong with Brad. Brad was fantastic and terrible. And like, I feel like I mentioned I'm enjoying the cast. We have had an embarrassment of riches with entertainingly bad Survivor players so far. It is just, what a delight. We got Brad, we got JD, we got Nasir. We're doing great. I'm loving this. We like so many bad players, and that bad players can suck, but there is an entertaining bad player, which we are blessed with this season. And one thing, actually, our theme song maestro, Mike, pointed out to me, Brad gets the little note right at the beginning, and there's like a brief pause when he says, beware. So it's almost like he's putting a colon in there, like, beware, advantage. Like the Simpsons joke, like, no money down? No, that should say, no, comma. Money down. And so it really did sound like Brad was saying, like, beware, advantage, as though he thought, it was cautioning him that there was an advantage inside there. And it just, little details like that made Brad thoroughly entertaining to me. Like, he failed spectacularly, and that's the best way to fail in Survivor.
Yeah, Brad was exactly what was on the tin when they were casting. It's just like a guy who is full high energy that is just like, why would I ever not do something? Yes, 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 we got to do it. And they're like, boom, yep, you're on. Even if we have to depopulate your entire state by a significant margin, you're on, because that is what we want. And yeah, I do think you and I both have a bias towards bad players who do too much, Yes. Bad players who just sit back and do nothing are like the bane of my existence.
Yes.
Both because I feel like it inhibits the show, and it pisses me off to no end that people champion them in the absence of any evidence of anything. They just use them as the blank canvas for which they can apply their own standards. Brad's not that, man. He's just like, yeah, it's fine. And, I did find him enjoyable. I'm also not upset that he was the one who went.
Not at all.
The mistakes he made are the same mistakes, I mean, frankly, the other players you're talking about, and several players like, man, shut the fuck up sometimes. Why do they tell everybody everything?
So good. He can't help himself. I mean, we're neglecting the fact that, like, 2 episodes ago, he's saying right in front of the person, hey, I'm actually thinking it's going to be you that I vote out this evening. Like, who's done that in the past 10 years?
Yeah, in his exits, he's like, actually, I wanted to vote out Ricard, but I knew that couldn't happen. I panicked and did that. And then right after, I was like, oh, what did I do? And it's like, again, you did exactly what the producers knew you would do.
Yes.
I don't think anything he did was a shock. It's like, there it is. We knew this guy was going to provide that element. It's like, you don't need to tell everybody. And I know, like, there are elements to these Beware advantages that clearly make people think they need to share. The loss of a vote is a big deal. But it's like, man, wait, you might not be voting for a while. You don't need to tell people right away. And people just can't not tell people things this season.
Although the person he told was Shan, and Shan had, of course, a decision to make. And do you think that she made the right decision? Because, obviously Brad was the boot tonight, but that wasn't the only way she could have gone.
I mean, literally, like, not yet 7 days ago at this point, because we started a little earlier, was I like telling people that, you should probably target the person who is currently powerless but holds a lot of potential power in their hands. And Shan did it. So why would I now turn around and criticize it? Like, I just hope that anybody who's celebrating Shan wasn't, embarrassingly trying to argue that no, they made the exact right choice last week, and that, there's no way that Xander could ever potentially pose a problem, which to your credit, he didn't.
Nope. The weird thing is, last week, I was like, it's fine. It wasn't the best decision, but it'll be fine. I wasn't like wholeheartedly behind it. And then I saw a bunch of diehard defenders of Evie and Liana making the move. And I'm like, well, no. Let's not get crazy here. Just because it wasn't horrific doesn't mean it was good.
Yeah, it's like when Ted Cruz starts tweeting out support for your public statements. Like, whoa,
wait, no, not on that side. No, wrong ally. And so I'm with you. I think there's also a little bit of a wrinkle to this one. I'm going to focus on Shan's perspective most. I guess Ricard is in there too. Shan was the one that it really hinged on, I think, because she had both of those guys really loyal to her. Mm-hmm. We got evidence of it in this episode and previous episodes, really. And it was set up such that basically you had to take one of those two out to show loyalty to the other. Otherwise, Jeannie's the easy choice there.
Jeannie would kind of be the voce of this one.
Yeah, exactly. And that would have been fine. Just to be clear, I'm consistent in that. No. When it came down to it, Brad can't vote. He's about to be potentially more powerful. It's a matter of how reliable she thinks he is as an ally and how useful he will be to her. And overall, probably JD's the better choice. Although you could just as easily argue that, like, they're both bad at the game in certain ways that could submarine you going forward. So neither's a great choice to keep, but you have to keep one, and taking out Brad is fine. At least get rid of the potential idol before it activates.
Yeah, and I don't want people to think that, like, my doctrine here is if you hear somebody has a shot at this idol but can't use it right now, then take them out. That's not what I'm saying. A part of it, my argument for last week is that it seemed to be Effie's. It seemed to be that's what they wanted to do, and then in the end they didn't end up doing it. But in this case, if you want to work long term with Brad, then fine. Yeah, great. Keep him around. Try to find the ways to use those idols to your advantage. It kind of seems like Brad would be amiable to that. But if you're unsure, now's the time to strike. And so, yeah, I fully support it. And I think the other part is this is what Ricard really wanted. He positioned it like, well, what do you think?
Yep.
And it was kind of interesting how Shan really didn't want to answer that question because it very much seems like she's somebody who doesn't want to be seen as a shot caller yet. She doesn't want to show her
cards yet, yeah.
Right. Which, again, bravo. Look at that. Somebody who knows to not just tell everybody everything at every moment. Who knew? Mm-hmm. But yeah, since she's kind of thinking that, like, I think she's decided that Ricard is probably going to be the person she wants to work with. Ricard wants Brad out. That's what he wants. It's not really that much of a, like, he wouldn't also mind JD, but he wants Brad out because it's clear that Jeannie and Brad aren't working with him, lest you forget that, like 4 days ago, JD voted for him. And he brings it up at tribal council, right? That he's like, I'm not as interested in tribal stuff now. Now I just want people who might be loyal to me. So if you think Ricard is your most stable ally in this alliance, or in your current tribe, I think that's a pretty solid notion given the other options. Then yeah, I think it should be Brad. And the other part is, yeah, JD is a mess, but he can be yours. Whereas Brad's a mess, you're sharing him with Jeannie.
And that was what I was going to get to, is that Shan at some point says that she thinks she might be Brad's number one, but can you be sure? I mean, it's not entirely clear that it's not Jeannie at this point. So you're taking some risk that down the line, Brad's actually a little more loyal to Jeannie than he is to you. So if that was part of what motivated her decision, fine. But I'm with you in thinking that Ricard also had some input into this. And really, you're not going to go against what Ricard is suggesting because you're not going to end up 2-2 without Brad's vote here.
And then, like, yeah, both her and Ricard is like, oh man, JD could be dangerous. Like, this is the second time we caught him. It's like, well, maybe the fact that he keeps getting caught suggests that he's not that dangerous, right?
Right.
And again, he could be dangerous in a different way, right? Like, you preferably be able to trust your alliance partners to not, just be caught in things constantly. But like in terms of JD tricking you, I don't know if JD's going to trick you. I think you have a pretty good idea of who he is and what he could do. Especially because I think Shan is amazing and is brilliantly controlling this game.
Oh my God. I love Shan so much. Adam B., one of our commenters, actually noted that Shan was invoking the Sandra principle there, like anyone but me with the vote. And we've praised the whole Sandra, anyone but me strategy in the past. But, and I think we might have even mentioned this before, it's surprisingly difficult to pull off. And I think even more so in a more modern game, because part of the difficulty is you have to just fluidly move between alliances. Like you have to have working relationships with people across alliances. And that's not as easy as it might sound. Like not everyone is totally motivated by their best interests. Sometimes you just dislike people and don't want to work with them. And so Shan strikes me as the type that could actually pull that off. Like she just seems like someone that gets along with everyone. I mean, we've seen clearly Brad has some form of relationship with her where he was excited to tell her about his advantages. She's strategizing with Ricard. JD gave her his advantage. And then also, I remember that first live tribal, he came over. Who's the person he talked to? Shan. So everyone, with the exception of Jeannie, seems to go towards Shan. Like she's got people believing in her regardless of which alliance they're in. And if she can continue that throughout the game, she's set, man. And I'm confident in her. I think she could pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah was also, I think, viewed Shan as her number one alliance partner.
Yep.
From what we saw. Yeah, we don't know. Like, I think pretty clearly Jeannie viewed Brad as her top one, but I think she also thought she was with Shan.
Yep.
No longer the case, obviously. Yeah. No, I love the way she's integrating, keeping options open. She's also able to do that thing where she has permission to discuss amongst different sides. Brad freaked out when Ricard and JD were going to the watering hole and had to bust ass to go listen to him. Shan, it seems like as soon as Brad's done telling her all of his advantages, is like, all right, cool. I'm going to go talk to the other people now. He's like, yeah, you go do that. Like, even in his exits, he still seems like he's on Team Shan all the way. So I think it really shows like a strong bond. My only concern, and this is a concern that you just going to have to work with because you have to do what you need to do, is if the bonds she's forming with people feel too personal to them, sometimes that can backfire.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you get to the end game, it's entirely possible that people might feel spurned by you rather than impressed by the fact that you beat them.
Yeah. So it's something that she'll have to like deal with, but yeah, I think she has to play to her strengths, and so far those are her strengths. And then I think it's just, maybe just finding little things, like maybe don't go too far. And like too far often, like in the past, has sometimes been, leaning on them for emotional support constantly, like Dawn did, right?
Yep.
She had great connections with everybody and was able to use that to maneuver herself and her alliance partners, namely Cochrane especially. But people don't like it when the person they felt like they were propping up in the game turns around and stabs them. So as long as she's not that, I think there will be room, again, provided who she would end up going as. But yeah, no, so far this season, she has been the most impressive player to me by a significant margin.
And I don't know that there's definitely not been any content on the show that I can recall that would suggest this, but I do wonder if she's working the pastor angle with anybody to make them think that she might be a little more trustworthy than she actually is.
Which could be dangerous.
It could be. Yeah, that's another thing that could ultimately backfire on her. But regardless, from what we've seen, I've been most impressed with her as a player so far this season.
Yeah, I've decided she's now my local Canadian rooting interest. I know before
we're bringing her back into the fold.
That's right. I mean, before I'm like, yeah, you were Canadian, but you live in America. It's not that big a deal that Survivor cast somebody living in America. But hey, man, it's not her fault that her parents made her choose at like age 5. That was weird. That was just like, and that actually made me, I think that's the one that made me think like, oh, maybe your bonds are too personal. If you're starting to feel like voting somebody out on day 8 is like the time my parents made me choose between them when I was a toddler, or 5 isn't a toddler, preschooler. Now I think it's just, for one, analogies. People say things. I certainly have never made exaggerated analogies when talking off the cuff.
Nope.
And then the other thing is like the bonds that people have in Survivor are so like enhanced. It's like if you've ever been to sleepaway summer camp. It's not a real world, and you depend on people, and you're kind of in this bubble. So I can understand like emotionally it feels like a lot, and then like this is my personal life experience makes me here. But it did, I don't blame anybody who's like, really like the trauma you have as a child is like voting this dude off. Really?
Well, and I can also get why it might be traumatic to vote out JD, because that kid's fucking fantastic. Like, if you were even debating it, it would break my heart. That he is just nothing but energy and confidence, and just never takes a moment to reconsider his actions, and it's beautiful to watch. I am loving JD so much. The more we get of JD, I keep thinking like, it's not going to be the same. There was a flash in the pan there, but he's doing his ridiculous Woo and Reem impressions. Who knew that there was lots of quotable lines from Woo?
I think that actually, that doesn't surprise me. In fact, I don't even feel like he did like the most quotable Woo stuff. He wasn't like, should they fight? Yeah, no, I love he's great. And like, we now have to like take back, every, wrong thing we said about the show casting young people. That's not true. Our opinions are right. And it's just that they can, fix theirs, because this is what you get a young person for, to be, completely unself-aware of themselves and just do dumb shit all the time and be great. I love JD.
There was one moment, by the way, where he's talking about the looking for the idol, and he's like evaluating all the people on his tribe, and he says something about like Ricard, and Ricard might know the most about Survivor out of anyone out here, and then beat except for me. I'm like, yes, be that man, JD. That's what I want.
No, and I mean, the absolute highlight of the episode for me, and I've tweeted this, was him at the challenge.
Yes.
Well, it is a challenge of, tossing something on a platform, and he decides he's just going to go for the layup, and it's just beautiful because it's just the whole thing. And this is what I'm saying. There's like character work within this. It's that you can just feel it in the moment because he isn't the first person to go up there. Ricard is. So he's ready. He's like, oh man, I'm going to show them I got this. You just wait. I'm going to blow everybody's mind. I'm going to save the day, and it's going to look so fucking sweet. And he gets up there and he takes his steps and he misses it by like 3 fucking feet. It's fucking amazing. I watched it like 15 times today because it's the screen grab for the podcast, as anybody listening now knows. Well, I guess you wouldn't know that from your podcatcher, but if you go to our website, which you should, purplerockpodcast.com, it's a great place.
Good plug.
If you go there, and yeah, it's a screenshot, and 15 times, and I watched Jeannie's reaction to the first miss. So, does that miss? And then they cut to the people sitting out, so Jeannie and the two from the other tribe, and she's just like, ugh. And it's just perfect. I love it. It's amazing.
I love that, like, if you're going for the layup, the idea of the layup is you have a convenient backboard there. Like, you're supposed to use the physics of the backboard to make the layup an easy shot. There is no fucking backboard here. You're just trying to lay it on a platform. Of course you're getting nothing.
And it's so telling of who he is because, like, so then he does it a second time. We only get 2 in the edit. Who cares? There might be more, whatever.
Sure.
The second time he blows it again, and then you see his tribe all throw their hands up in the air, and Shan is just like, stop making this the NBA and just shoot it. Nobody else who misses 2 in a row get all of these reactions, but everybody there knows the score. This is JD being too fucking much, trying to be cool, because that's what they probably deal with all the time, and it's beautiful, and I love it.
Also, I have never seen more relatable basketball moves in my life. Missing an easy layup. Come on.
Yeah, if we're going to get right into basketball here, then they bring in Brad and they, almost get it done. And wow, who knew that when you put the objective of a game high in the air, height might be an advantage? Just putting it out there. That's amazing. It blew my mind that, being closer to the objective could provide some level of advantage. But they couldn't, they decided that maybe JD had a different advantage in such a game. But yeah, the blown layup is because he wasn't close. He wasn't even I forget, not only was his hand nowhere near this objective, which I believe is probably higher than 10 feet.
Yep.
His finger roll doesn't approach it. That bag goes nowhere near the objective.
Here's the thing. I don't know if you've ever held a sandbag and a basketball, but they don't quite have the same density. The one does not quite roll off your fingers quite as well as the other.
Are you suggesting that the finger roll might not provide the proper physics in a bag of sand that it does in a ball?
It's crazy. I know. I'm just saying. You might notice that if you pick up a bag of sand, it more conforms around your hand rather than retains its position as a ball might. So it's not ideal to let it roll off your fingers in that it doesn't roll really well because it's not a perfect sphere.
Oh, man, it's great. And so we're laughing because that's what we do. We laugh at things that are funny. We have fun with the show that we watch every week. But I think there's more to it, and that's why he's a great character is, they've given us this twice. We get at Tribal Council, and, somewhat people might feel it's the thumb on the scales, but I think it's actually really instructive when he talks about how, Survivor gave me everything and I could learn how to be cool and all this from watching and blah, blah, blah. He thinks that he has changed himself, that he is no longer that nerd that, was socially awkward or whatever. And he certainly had, kind of a glow up, which often happens as you get older.
Yep.
But it's painfully obvious that's still who he is.
Yes.
This is all an act, and he's not fooling anybody. That's why they were throwing their hands up in the air. He's doing Survivor impressions. Can you imagine anything dorkier than that? Maybe having a podcast, but that's, debatable. And because he's 19, he doesn't know who he is. He has no idea who he is. He's still trying on the outfits of who he can be because that's what you do when you're young. That's what it's all about. So I do think it's actually really interesting. And it's kind of getting back to what I was saying, where people were like, there's no room for personal content. It's like, no, we got some,
Yep.
We got some with, the impressions and with him, talking about how, besides me, of course, I'm the best, but it's just they keep giving us this enough that he is amusing. but he's not a clown. Like, I think there's enough there to be like really interested in what it's like to be JD, and why I also think that it would be great if he comes back several times. And then maybe years from now, when he stopped trying to like play the role of cool guy, he'll just be comfortable in who he is and not worry that he also has this nerd side to him.
And that's what I would suggest. Like, JD, if you're listening, first of all, why? Secondly, we love you so much. Thirdly, just embrace being that awkward nerd that you are. Like, it's okay to be the entertaining dork. Like, you'd be great at it. Like, I find you extremely entertaining in ways that I do not normally enjoy teenagers on this program. So, yeah, I agree with you. There's so much potential here. He's entertaining. He's just charismatic. I love him. He's great television.
And for the record, I think there is really something to the fact, like, I'm no longer going to be the wallflower, the doormat.
Sure.
I'm going to put myself out there, and if I have to, fake some confidence until I gain it, then great. I think I support that. May have done something similar in my life before. So that's all good. It's just, it's a journey, and he's not there yet. And, I'm happy that Survivor caught him at this moment too,
Yes.
Cause, he tried to fucking dunk a beanbag from like something that was 15 feet in the air. It's amazing.
It's like, I've been starving for a week. I'm sure I've got the ups though. Let me see. Oh God.
That's right. I literally just got out of the ocean. I don't even know if he's wearing but sneakers,
I'm weighed down by soaking wet clothes, but let's see how well this goes.
And yeah, it's just like, it's like he, it's not a shot, it was a layup, but it's like he was Carlton who like takes the ball and I'm going to be the hero.
Just chucks it.
Throws it and nowhere near the target. And yeah, again, what made it was, the reaction.
Yes.
Nobody else got the look of disgust when you missed, because, of course you missed. It's hard.
Yeah.
But no, this guy was like, I'm going to show you how it's done. This is going to be amazing.
It's the ways in which he missed that the rest of the team is like, oh, for the love of fucking God, JD. So great.
Again. All right. Earlier in the episode, we talked a bunch about how a lot of time was dedicated to the distribution and explaining of all the stuff. But a lot of it really boiled down to, it was another trip to the island. Only this time they didn't make us watch a hike. Hey, people just last week were like, are we really going to have to watch a hike every time? We didn't.
Nope.
We got to watch Brad sneak out of the camp at night by setting up an elaborate, thing that was completely unnecessary. Wait, just so people know, I am not criticizing that at all. This is getting back to why Brad was an amazing choice to be on this show. Just last season, we marveled at Tony, like, rubbing spit, grease, dust in Sarah's face so she could make the trip at night. Do extra, it'd be great. Because, like, the other people just walk off because that's all you need to do. Brad actually introduces an element of, like, that where he could get burned, where it'd be like, so I actually went up to go to the washroom last night, and instead of Brad there, I saw, like, an elaborate dummy set up of him. What's up with that? That was weird, right?
And people should also learn, just overcommit to the gimmick, and you will get airtime. Like, the Tony thing, the Rupert thing, like, just the people who overcommit to the gimmicks that Survivor lays out in front of you, you will get televised, and it'll be entertaining. Just do the ridiculous thing, please.
So they get there, and we have a new variation on what they've been doing. So it's all been, you have a chance, but if the different ways you choose, either you're going to get what you want, or you're not going to get anything at all. What did you think about this week's? What would you have done?
So I think one flaw with this week's is, let's say everyone there is like, let's be above board. Let's all get a tarp. We'll bring it back. We'll be heroes for our tribes. We'll have a tarp. We'll keep us all safe and dry and blah, blah, blah. You then have to explain to your tribe how you ended up with a mystery tarp. I mean, I don't know that it was clear to them.
It might just show up in the mail, though.
Right. So I don't know that it was clear to them at the time that it was just going to show up in your tree mailbox. Maybe it was. I don't know. We didn't get that information. But at the same time, like, when it came down to it, and the idea of potentially risking your vote for a second vote advantage, I mean, we've talked enough about the extra vote thing to know that it's so rare that it's going to be useful for you. I don't think I would have bothered risking it. Like, I understand Sydney's rationale entirely. I don't think I would have bothered risking it. I'm kind of surprised Tiffany didn't, but I wouldn't have if I were Sydney.
I think she only did it because of the vibe she caught from Sydney. I think Tiffany was like 100%, whatever. What do I need my vote for? I have 2 alliance partners that bend to my will. Whereas she's like, oh, she might not do it now. Like it was the lack of trust that she had with another person, which again relates to kind of everybody be telling everybody. And I think this one actually has a new dynamic because last week, of course, we were criticizing Evie for giving up too much information. I think the very act of being there and nobody else is around makes people feel like these are co-conspirators, that we can work together and they're not on my tribe, but it's like they might be tomorrow, man. You need to keep some of this stuff a little more tight-lipped. And to Sydney's point, it's like I don't know you, and now we're supposed to do all this. For me, the move is absolutely tell everybody and really sell it that like this is too big a risk. Let's take our votes are too important. The tarp is so valuable. We need to have the tarp. And then you get up there and you vote to take the idol, to take the vote. So that way, hopefully you guarantee that somebody, if not, the other 2 said tarp and they get nothing and you get something. That's the way you play it.
Of course, that's how you should do it. But I'm saying like in Sydney's position, I don't think I'd bother risking my vote.
Yeah, so I guess if I'm in Sydney's position, it's like I probably don't need my vote. I just got everybody on my tribe to be turned against one person.
Well,
more on that later. But yeah, so that's the thing. Now, of course, in doing that, you have to trust that the other 2 people aren't doing the same thing, which is the beauty of this, and why I think that while I am incredibly sympathetic to the idea that there are just too many things, especially since they seem committed to this being like a weekly feature thus far. That's like how many are going to be out there. But I like the choices and the forced choice and the idea and what it's revealing people. Sydney revealed herself to be a bit more pragmatic. Tiffany revealed herself to be a little more aggressive. She was like, are we here to play Survivor or not? So I do think we are getting like character moments within this. And that's why I'm not willing to dismiss it as all bad. But again, maybe too much.
And on the Sydney front, she surely might feel as though she's in a secure place in her tribe, but they haven't fucking voted yet. So until you know exactly where those tribal lines might be drawn, I don't know that it's worth the risk at that point. And normally I would encourage you to take risks, but in this specific instance, I don't know that the risk was worth taking for her.
See, for me, it's because if you vote TARP, the other people aren't. So you get screwed. You get nothing. So it's like, why am I going to be the one who falls on their sword to protect Brad and Tiffany getting this? I want them to get nothing and me to get something. So, that's why. That's why, for me, it'd be like, really sell it and hopefully get a sense as I'm doing it that we're all going TARP, 3-2-1 team, and then screw those other 2. Because and the beauty of it is, even if we all make the merge, they don't know if I'm the one. They only know that they're not the one.
That's a good point. But again, let's talk some Sydney, because Sydney was another person that there was some discussion around this week, and part of it is that people seem to be viewing Sydney as a villain of this season already. And is that the impression that you're getting from her?
Not even a little bit. Like this was teased a bit in comments last week, and I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Frankly, I don't know if I completely knew the person to which the name Sydney applied to last week. And then, this week it's come up from multiple people. And I'm just like, what? Why? And I've kind of foolishly tried to dig in a bit, and I don't get it. I don't understand what she has done that is inherently villainous. How about yourself?
I would say definitely not in the heroes versus villains sense is she a villain, because those villains were fucking fun. And so far, I haven't seen much out of Sydney that makes me think she's necessarily all that fun. She's fine. I'd say she's just baseline Survivor here. She's plotting. She's trying to make sure that when a vote actually does happen, that it won't be on her. They've got some other target. But that's just what you should probably be doing before there's a vote that takes place in your tribe. Like, you want to have some idea where you stand. And if you don't, probably where you stand is on the bottom. So I don't see how that's in any way villainous so much as trying to position yourself within the tribe, which is really what everybody should be doing.
If anything, it seems like she's trying to maintain status quo, right? Like in her choice there, she's like, no, it's too big a risk. I don't need it. I'm not going to do it. I don't know if you guys should too. Although apparently they wanted Brad to. Anyway, different thing. Not enough data. But in what happens at the beach is that Nasir is stirring up trouble on the successful tribe, the tribe that is not going to tribal council and doesn't really seem to be close to going to tribal council. Like, I believe they've been first place.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes.
So he's like, why are you waking me up in the middle of the night to start scheming? We should just get along. And so in her mind, it's like that's the unstable element that's going to drag us all down. We should all know about it. This is something we can unite around instead of, playing ball. And apparently that makes her a villain. And far be it for me to ever, that's not the word. There's a word anyway. Hypothesize would be one. Why people feel the way they do. Only you can know for sure. But I do wonder is if because people really like Nasir. We talked about it last week. He seems really fun, very endearing.
Yes.
I like him as well.
Same.
But I don't think there's a difference between Sydney deciding that she'd rather ally with the Shan and Danny and thus tell them of Nasir's intention to target them, which I must make clear and underline, Nasir is targeting them. He's done this twice now. This is his intention. He woke her up in the middle of the night to discuss this. This was his move, unless you somehow believe that incredibly flimsy, English is a first language story. When you thought I meant that I wanted to vote out Danny when I, made sure to talk to you about voting out Danny.
And this, after in the first episode, I might have suggested that they were hunting for idols and maybe we should be suspicious of them. But that's, it's just, oops.
Yeah. And not just that we should be suspicious, like he was like, okay, we got to vote for them. Like this is an ongoing thing with him.
Right.
Even, when they've had some grace and let it, paper over, he's just like, no, it's time to dive back in. But I don't see there's any difference between her telling her preferred alliance partners what she'd rather do, and there is in Evie deciding that she'd rather ally with Liana and Tiffany and tell her all about Xander's stuff. Like, there's no difference. The only difference is, I think, that you guys like Nasir and don't like Xander. I know people hate it when I dare ever suggest that, their, evaluations and motivations on the show are motivated by their own, personal wants and desires. So I'm probably off base, but like, in terms of like, is somebody villainous? It's like, no, she's just telling her alliance partners information. That's what you do. Like Shan is playing every side on her tribe.
Yes.
She's shared any information that she needs with the different people. And people are correctly celebrating her for it. So it's like, I don't understand why Sydney has to be the one to acquiesce to, the desires of her male tribe mates. Like, she's just doing what's in her interest. And yet people think that she's awful for it. And again, I don't know how many people, but it's more than some. And I'm not seeing it. I know. And I mean, I suppose these people will tell me it's because of the secret scene. You've seen the secret scene, right?
I have. And it was a very good secret scene. And for those who didn't see it, it was from last week. Heather was trying to, put the target on Sydney essentially by making up a dream that Sydney was this terribly duplicitous, awful person. And, Heather woke up and was
stole her torch from her house.
Like, oh, I don't like you because my dream. So I know that you're, not trustworthy and you're terrible and we got to vote you out. And it was actually a very good, entertaining secret scene, but Heather was doing the same shit that Sydney was doing, just trying to put...
No, she wasn't. She was doing more. Sydney was just like, it was just a dream, dude. What are we doing here? And people are in comments are be like, yeah, no, it makes me hate her more. And it's like, I guess you guys just hate that Sydney is deciding to do her thing instead of your thing. Heather was targeting her.
Yep.
That's what was happening.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there was some complaint that, Sydney was having this discussion with everybody and not including Nasir. Well, it's generally, I think there was a New York Times story to this effect this week. It's generally not encouraged to talk shit about someone right to their face with everybody around. It's generally viewed as rude to do that. So, maybe in this case, Nasir subpoenaed the group DMs and overheard, but I don't know that it was clear that Sydney knew that anyone was listening.
Yeah, like they're taking offense that they didn't include Nasir in the conversation about him. Yeah, that's what fucking Survivor is. That's what you do. You exclude people. Now, bad move on all of them to do it like 5 feet away from the dude.
Yep.
But yeah, like you would not include him in this conversation. If he's included, it's a different conversation. And you're like, yeah, well, he shouldn't, it was rude to include everybody but him. It's like, so you think that she should have excluded more people? Would you support her then if she also left Heather out of this conversation? Which ultimately, she probably really should have left Heather out of this conversation, but she doesn't know that because she is unaware that Heather is targeting her. I think another piece of evidence people have is that like Tiffany didn't get a good vibe off her. It's like, yeah, because they weren't vibing because Tiffany was all like, yeah, so everybody but you get something, especially me, right? And yeah, so it's like, again, I'm not even like standing Sydney. I'm fairly neutral on her. I'm just baffled at the response. It's like none of this, like at your point. She does not yet deserve the honor of villain.
No.
She's just kind of there doing Survivor things.
You're like grading her as though she's art and she's just a sketch at this point. There's just not enough there to give any sort of rating to.
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, no, look, this year seems fun. He also seems like a really shitty Survivor player.
Which is fine. He seems very entertaining, and we love players like that. And also, who cares? Like, it's a game. I don't think Nasir is particularly hurt by it. He's trying to play the game just as much as Sydney and Heather is. It just so happens that he's not doing as well at it, from what we can tell. I mean, they haven't even fucking voted, so you never know. They could get to their first vote, and everybody could be like, oh man, that Sydney keeps talking shit about you, Nasir. Let's vote her out. We don't know. We haven't seen them vote.
Yeah. And it's just like, his reaction was, I think I might be in trouble. It's like, yeah, loose lips, man. It's the same thing as JD, being way too out there and people, responding. That's what's happening. You think it's one way and thus you think it's perfectly fine to, aim your targets at people, even though there's really no evidence of when that information will be important. Clearly, he is incorrect in his assessment of who is on his side and who is not. We have that information as well. And yeah, that he took his shot and it missed. Right. Because that's Survivor.
That happens to everybody. Almost everybody.
And just because you find him cute because he was useful around camp doesn't mean that he is exempt from people not appreciating him trying to vote them out. That is a legitimate thing he is trying to do. It is not incumbent upon the targets of his gameplay to be graceful about it. Yes, they can laugh at him if they want. Hey, guess what? One of my biggest alliance partners, this other person approached me about voting you out. That's kind of funny, right? I'm not going to do that because you and I have a thing. Yeah. And the one thing we didn't mention with JD?
What's that?
Getting busted with his advantage.
So good.
So like it just brings me back for this scared conversation of like, too much confidence in their abilities and where they're at. Is that, it's like you come back from the bathroom and you just don't do up your pants or something. So that, like, how is that just sitting there falling out? Like, there's no bigger symbol of not understanding how people see you, of literally not knowing what is showing in your outfit.
So the one really bad thing about Sydney potentially targeting Nasir is that it really puts all the burden on JD to be the entertaining bad player and just really carry that load for the rest of the season. I mean,
I have trusted him.
I think he could do it. I think he's got that potential. He could make it happen. And just the note hanging out there. And then explaining it to Shan as though he was always going to tell her when she's like, okay, but I saw it and that's why you're talking to me. Yeah, no, that's right. Yes, but how about you hold it? Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, no, that's why I thought of it in this moment and why I was glad we brought it back. Is that's what this year is happening. He didn't get left out. You got busted. And that's the same thing with JT. It's not time to come clean. You got busted, dude. It's great. One thing I do believe, just the language they were using, that he did not give her, like, officially transfer power of the advantage. She's just holding it. She doesn't get to spend the money. She just gets to hold it. So I don't think if she had voted JD out, I don't think that advantage would be of use to her. That was my interpretation. I could be wrong, but just the specific language that Shan and JD were using is that, like, I'm keeping this while you're in timeout. suggests that it wasn't an officially a give, because there's kind of like a ceremonial thing that you have to do for cameras or production,
Right.
so that they know that as opposed to you just grabbed it from them. But yeah, so what's great about that with JD is what I'm assuming happened there is when he's saying, I got to go to the washroom, he's going to get his advantage. He probably has it hidden somewhere. And this is prior to tribal council. But what's great is, like, for years, I think people have, I think, very accurately suggested that an imbalance in the show and the importance of idols is that men's outfits typically have pockets and women's don't, and thus men have an advantage in hiding these things. But he didn't put it in his pocket. Like, how do you not just put it in your pocket? Why is it hanging out of your unzipped, jean shorts instead of, like, in the many places our clothing allows you to hide folded paper? That's all it is folded paper. And he just has it hanging out of his crotch. Like, why is that a storage device at all? I don't understand. It's fantastic.
It was. I was going to say that it's sitting in there like a dollar bill and a stripper's G-string, but you wouldn't get to that reference because you're...
That's right. We just throw coins. We can get into it comments if you want, but please don't make us not. I thought I was going to get into this in another section, but we haven't touched upon it. I think the only other big thing that happened out of this episode...
wait, you know what? Let me set you up, Boo. I got you. Because we got some canon this week. Liana's reaction to last week's vote. Go ahead. Gloat on it. It's all you.
I mean, there was a lot of people doing a lot of work to justify the decision-making, suggesting, no, they did not do this because they were bullied by Tiffany. This was the right decision, and they carefully measured all of these potential outcomes and formed secret alliances with Xander. And then the very first thing we see is Liana, like, literally crying about it and calling it a potential $1 million mistake. So, there you go. I mean, again... It did not burn them, and, with Brad voted out, Xander is no closer to having these advantages. Now, the one thing he is still in the game. But in terms of, whether it was a good decision or not, I did not think so, and one of the decision makers clearly did not think so either. So that was kind of a beautiful.
Yes, and I would say to her what I said last week is that you'll probably be fine, unless Xander wins, and then you absolutely blew it. But you'll probably be fine.
It could be $1 million mistake. It's a title of an episode. It must mean something. Yep. It doesn't mean anything. And one other thing that I think I was also right about, and I only want to discuss the things I was right about, not all the things I was wrong about, is a lot of people were like, oh, well, it's so high odds that, his idol will activate. Other people have to find it. And then, like, they have to agree to do it. And, like, what are the chances? Somebody's not going to. We had 4 beware advantages found in this episode, and every single one of them was opened without hesitation. I don't believe that we should really hang our hats on the fact that somebody is not going to do it. Now, I mean, funnily, like, literally one of them never even read the word beware, but again, we can't count that out for the future. That was hilarious.
That was great. But the one counter that I would have to that is that the blue tribe is the one tribe that might know. We know one person in that tribe does know the mechanics of the beware idol thing. So at least that person, possibly others, might then, if we don't know whether they would or they wouldn't, take the risk of opening that idol.
See, for me, if it's to Shan, depending on how much he was paying attention to the weird banter before the challenge, it should be noted that there is so much more banter at these things than what is aired.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not just, something about broccoli. Okay, let's get this challenge started. Like, they actually sit there and talk for a while.
Quite a while. They need to, like, go over, you ask any questions. That's why when people are like, this thing is too confusing, the contestants couldn't know. It's like, you're allowed to ask questions for the most part and figure this out. So if it is scenario, it's like, well, why would I choose TARP if then it'll explain that I was here? I'm sure somebody would say, no, the TARP will just be distributed and nobody will know that it was attributed to you. Anyway, if Deshaun was paying attention, he knows now that it's 2/3 of the way there, baby. So all he needs to do is say, well, I'm good and I'm golden, because he, of course, does not know that Brad was voted out. And I imagine he's probably not going to assume it.
And when you think about it, pickles are just cucumbers soaking in another plant's juices.
I mean, that's a point, but did you ever think clapping is repeatedly hitting yourself because you like something?
So yeah, if I'm Deshaun, I'm grabbing that thing because there's just too much weird talk going on at the immunity challenges. But again, that's if Shan is the one that finds it. We don't know. He could have told Danny. He could have told Nasir for reasons that wouldn't make sense at all.
He's not telling
He
Nasir.
didn't tell Nasir. but anyway.
Could tell Sydney, who apparently has a lot of connections on her tribe to the point where everybody goes to her about things because she's a villain.
Sure. Could have told anybody. Or he could find it himself and be like, oh, hell yeah, this is mine. And just step up to the plate in that next immunity challenge.
Yeah, what I'm saying is it's much less likely that somebody finds a beware idol or advantage and heeds it and be like, you know what, I don't want that.
Yep.
Yeah, again, not out of the question, but the most likely scenario, as evidenced by everybody who's found one so far, is the modern survivor so amped up to be like, yeah, and like the very point I made last week about how this. When you see it, you're not assuming that it's going to be something like you may never get to vote ever in the history of this game, no matter how many other advantages we've given you to vote. You just assume that it's going to be something like you have to sneak out of camp. Literally, that's what it was.
Yep.
So it's like, I don't even know if you have precedent at this point because you've watched the season, then they do the same thing. You'd be like, well, this could be an extreme whammy, or this could be nothing. Which I think is part of the design, right? Door 3 isn't always the whammy, but it also makes it like, how does anybody play Survivor anymore when all the rules seem so carelessly arbitrary? I don't know. But I think anybody who finds it on the Blue Tribe is doing it.
Probably.
But 2 people have to find now. So it is not a guarantee that the original, mistake by Yasa will result in Xander voting them out. My point always was that it's still in play, and thus they shouldn't have. Like my girl Shan didn't. She didn't let that become a problem by, shooting Jeannie instead of Brad.
Exactly. All right. That is all for this week's episode. If you want to check out our website, it's purplerockpodcast.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, the show is at Purple Rock Pod. I'll be doing live tweets during the show every week. At Purple Rock Andy is Andy. You're not going to believe this, but at Purple Rock John, that's me. What else do they need to know, Andy?
We're on a bunch of streaming services, including Spotify and YouTube. Hit that like button and subscribe so that we can,
smash things.
Yeah, nothing, it will change our lives none if you do that. But if you want to, if that will make your life better and thus knowing when the next content is there, feel free. But, I don't think we monetize. So,
no.
Hit the theme music.